Hello folks, welcome to my video on landing the F-100 Super Sabre. This topic's gotten no shortage of play among the internet community on this aircraft, and I think for good reason, because if you are used to flying anything else, the methods that you use to land a typical airplane are going to get you killed flying this. So it's something that Grinnelli and his team have been very upfront about in communicating, but even so, there's a difference between reading about a topic and actually doing it, right? So instead of kind of hanging out in the sidelines and hoarding my knowledge, I'm just going to share how to land the airplane. And it's actually very easy and straightforward as long as you just stick to using the rudder. That's it. That's the entire trick then and there. I've seen a lot of guys crash this thing in the last couple of days since it has been released, and the consistent thing that I see people doing wrong is they turn the airplane and they may remember to use the rudder in like the first turn maybe, or even on like short final, but as soon as people line up to land and they're just a little bit misaligned, like the runway's off to the left or to the right, old habits kick in, people touch the stick to correct, and then they're yawing right into the dirt. So this is one of the reasons why the F-100 had such a high accident rate, because, well, if you're learning to fly the jet and every other airplane you've ever flown has been controlled with the stick and the ailerons, well, it's an easy mistake to make. And unfortunately, in the 50s and the 60s for that matter, if you got into this kind of a jam, your odds of surviving it were pretty low. It's relevant because it's tied to how the F-100 got to the trouble it did, but if you got into a low speed, low altitude issue, basically you were screwed, because back in the day there were no zero altitude, zero airspeed ejection seats. So if you messed up on short final and rolled the jet, you could eject, but that basically was just a psychological relief valve before you died, because you weren't going to survive. You needed at least 90 knots of forward airspeed to get the chute and all the stuff to work, and you needed a certain amount of altitude for the ejection seat to actually get you clear. So if you messed up on landing, that was probably going to be the last mistake you'd ever make. So something to think about, because nowadays in our 0-0 era, things work a little bit different. So looking at our instruments here, I'm just banking the jet. Pay attention to the rudder pedals. Notice that as I'm turning the airplane, the goal here is to get the jet in a position where I'm decreasing speed, lining it up for the runway, and getting ready to land. Just making a right hand pattern there to the field. Notice that I'm only using the stick for attitude control. I'm not moving it left, I'm not moving it right. Also, something to bear in mind when you're landing this airplane, the same engine stall that could happen to you in conventional forward flight can also happen to you when you are on landing. Obviously, when you are landing an airplane that requires 60 to 80% power to maintain airspeed, losing the engine at that point would be a bad thing. So if you need to lower your nose, the options on the table are to first decrease power, just decrease power a little bit. Just bring it back, just like maybe just a touch, just a little bit. Obviously, your throttle settings are going to play a role in this. Everybody's got a different configuration, but just bring your throttle back a little bit. That'll bleed your airspeed down, your nose will settle, and then just add some power back in to reestablish your glide slope, and you'll be in business. So as we commence our base leg turn down here, rolling into Laughlin. Once again, we're just calmly and smoothly bringing the power back. We're at about 250 knots. It's a little fast, but that's not a bad thing. We can bleed some speed off here. Also note that you do have a pretty big speed brake, so if you need to shed some speed, just bring it forward a little bit. You'll see me do that a couple of times as we line up to land. Also, just a little tip if you are new to this jet, and I imagine at this point, so close to release, you probably are. Don't be afraid to make a long pattern, right? You can work your turns closer to the field once you get a little more hours behind the jet, but when you're brand new, don't hesitate to do a long turn a few miles away. No one's going to think less of you because you made a 10-mile base leg turn versus a 2-mile base leg turn. And as you get better, you can bring it in closer and closer until, you know, you get 100 hours in the jet, 200 hours in the jet. That's when you can start doing some, you know, close Thunderbirds type, you know, sharp brake type of thing. But don't do that when you're first starting, because you'll put yourself in a regime where you got to really transition from the stick to the throttle as the speed goes down, or I should say stick to the rudder as the speed goes down. And unless you have practice doing that, you're going to put yourself in a world of hurt. So lining up here on Laughlin, bringing the landing gear down. Got a little bug in my throat. Sorry about that, folks. Another tip, and you'll see this play a role as I line up for final approach: bind the seat's elevation controls to something you can control. In the F4, there's an actual switch on the seat, and it's pretty handy. So I just raise the seat before landing, and that works for what I do. In the F-100, I'm not sure if there is a similar switch or if you have to fix your position in the settings. Let me know in the comments how that works, but you'll see here that as I line up to land, basically the instrument panel blocks the view at the last little bit. But fortunately, again, the F-100 not only looks good, but it's also pretty stable. As long as you don't touch the stick side to side while you are on landing approach, you've got a pretty easy time. This is generally the part where people start making mistakes. They'll line up and then they'll see that the runway is a little to the left or to the right. Like I said before, they'll start using the stick because that's just habit. And then in this jet, if you do that, adverse yaw is going to come and punch into the ground. So right now, as you notice, I'm coming in to land. Notice that my corrections are very gentle and they are all on the rudder. So this may go without saying, but for those of you who have unusual rudder configurations, or you have twist axes or some other kind of mapping, all I can say is make sure that you've got your setup, however you do your rudder thing, make sure your setup is refined enough that you can make gradual movements. If you just have like a WS kind of key thing, I'm not sure how it's going to work, because it's going to be a very digital all on all off thing, and that's just not going to work with this plane's flight style. So as we come in for landing, just keep an eye on the approach speed, make sure you're not settling, not going too slow. This is the part where I really would have liked to have the option to move my seat up, and tell me in the comment section if there's a switch to do that and where it is. I just haven't, looked at it and bound it. But coming in here, I'm a little bit to the left. There is about a 13 knot wind because I have Atmos X enabled, so we are flying and landing into a crosswind here a bit. So just, again, gentle, slow rudder movements. The plane's pretty responsive with the rudder, so keep the stick centered. Just use it to go up. Do not push down, because if you do that, you'll stall the engine, and bad news for you. So as we come over the threshold, bring the power back a little bit. She'll just settle onto the runway, and pow, there's that crosswind as I put the chute back. Also, I instantly barbecued my brakes. Turns out, I didn't realize this at the time, but I found out later that I had my wheel brakes reversed. When I set up my wheel brakes in the rudder axes, those were apparently flipped by default. So the moment I landed, I barbecued my brakes immediately. So you'll see that they are, as Grinnelli Design says, aptly programmed, smoking, because they are fresh roasted F-100 brakes with a side of Angry Crew Chief to go. But there you have it. Barbecued brakes aside, we got safe, we got landed. Obviously Laughlin's not a very big runway as jets go, and we made that landing just fine. And that's it. Just use your feet, stick to the rudder, and use gentle corrections, especially on final approach, and you'll bring her down safe and sound. Thanks for tuning in, folks. If you liked the video, click the subscribe button for notifications on my upcoming uploads. Thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.